We are live, everybody. It's not the Monday night K-Pro Cow Powwow. This is Thursday. It's Treasure Hunt Amusement Park, except it's not because we've got a special guest, not Jack. We got Mr. Rudy Green, owner of the Ray Vanetti's replica chest, and was on our panel a little while ago, and he's back tonight. So thanks for coming on, Rudy.
Hey, thanks for inviting me back. I think there's still a lot to talk about.
Oh, definitely there is. And I am sad to say there is no K-Pro PowerPoint tonight, but K-Pro's here. How you doing, K-Pro?
Hello. And I will say why I asked Rudy if he could come back and just him come back, because there's some people doing the really hard work and analyzing some things a little differently. I got more emails about Rudy than probably in the last week, at least. And so we actually wanted to kind of dive into getting Rudy's thoughts, because there's a ton going on. There's some things that I don't think it's super secret information, Rudy, that you have. Like you don't live next door to Jack. You're not related to Jack. You've just picked up on some things that I think others haven't. And so you're going on your own journey. And I think it'd be cool to talk to you about what that is, because you're mostly on Reddit, correct?
Yeah, that's been my primary hangout spot. I was on Mysterious Writings way back in the day, but and I cross post stuff to Thor as well, depending on what format I think will work for that audience.
Nice. So we're going to kind of let it be Rudy's show tonight. And of course, I will weigh in and blabber along. We want the room to give us some of their thoughts. But it's really interesting, all the things that Rudy is up to. So, and of course, he has the Vanetti chest in case you guys want to see it. He's an owner of one, and it's just been doing lots of things. I rarely go on Reddit. So it's one thing that's interesting to me. Forum people are the forum people, the Reddit people are the Reddit people, the Facebook people are the Facebook people. Only a few there's a little bit of subsets, but you're kind of mostly on one, but you'll dabble in others is how I see it. Like I'm mostly forum, and I do a little bit more on Facebook, but I wasn't even on Facebook before. But anyway, so tell us where we're going to start. And again,
first,
weigh in.
Yeah, first, let me just say thumbs up for Rudy coming on. Thumbs up for no K-Pro PowerPoint, and thumbs up because I didn't mean that in a bad way. There's a different treasure chest behind Rudy, and he's already told us he's not lifting the Vanetti's one anymore. So maybe he'll tell us about that one later on. But yeah, go ahead, Rudy, take it away.
Maybe. It depends on how much energy I have. The Vanetti's chest is very heavy, as you might have seen from before. But I thought we'd start out just because it's the most talked about thing in the last couple of days or weeks, maybe, the Slough Creek solutions that have cropped up. And I think just even my story of approaching that might be interesting, because I was gone for 5 days down on a vacation with not really paying any attention to the internet or what was going on the forums. And I come back and I hop on Thor, and everybody's talking about this location.
Slough Creek.
And I've actually been there before, not searched there, but just stopped at the trailhead.
You vacation there too, through. Like Shannon? Oh, okay.
Well, this is what's interesting is I can relate to the idea of not being a searcher at that location, but still ending up there. It's a little off the ways, but we were going up to after a failed boots on the ground back in Montana, and me and some friends, we were tooling around all over Yellowstone, and went up as far as Icebox Canyon, and then stopped at a few different trailheads and locations on the way back. None of that was searching. None of that was really even considering those areas. At that stage, I'd pretty much written off Yellowstone as being a potential search area.
Wait, can we go back for a second, though?
Sure.
You disappear for 5 days. You come back, and you don't just see Slough Creek. I'm sure there's a lot that's happened in those 5 days.
Yes, it took hours just to catch up.
I was gonna say we hadn't done that show yet where we're like, okay, for those of you that were out, we didn't do it just for Rudy. Several people were like, I had life happen this week. What the hell happened? How long did it take you to piece together what happened? And how did that, was it believable to you? Did it seem contrived? Did you watch Shannon's video? Did you, what were you thinking?
Well, I tried to piece it together first by watching Shannon's video. I'm been subscribed to her channel a long time, and so you have all this list of content that YouTube has alerted in the last 5 days. And that seemed to be the source of the information. So I went and watched the entire video. And at the end of the video, 45 minutes later, I went, cool. I still don't know why we're talking about Slough Creek. Why is this thrown out there as an idea? And I'll tell you my conclusion, but I also think this is an area where Shannon may have slipped up, which is,
all right. There's the music. Yeah.
She describes an area. This is what's hard to do when you're talking live, and it's impressive that Forrest was able to keep secrets. But I think she slipped up because she describes an area and there's this area with a radius of 10 miles. And when you think of a radius, you think of a circle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you see her correct it and even gesture on the screen. It goes, no, it's a rectangle. Now, if I was doing charades and I said, there's a rectangle-shaped search area in Wyoming that's about 10 miles, is Slough Creek what you would have come up with?
Maybe.
Maybe.
I would have gone like this. Right?
It's at best like a diagonal. In places,
Diagonal.
it's almost going straight north.
It is. It would have been. You know what? You're right. That's interesting.
And so I concluded that, even before I saw the other arguments, I'd kind of like gone, I don't think this is the correct answer there. I think what she's referring to is a horizontally not diagonal search space.
So, I was going to ask you, is there a rectangular shape in Yellowstone that would fit that mile radius?
Maybe ask the chat. I don't want to poison it with my own ideas.
Oh,
but if you weren't thinking of Slough Creek, what other areas would you think of with those dimensions and that sort of distance?
There's two pieces. One's obvious one, and a second piece that I wanted to see if you picked up on. The other one was, she's like, oh, by the way, randomly, I just remembered this. My search partner was in 100 feet of it. And it's where he has searched.
Crazy.
I mean, she randomly thought it and said within 100 feet rather than 10 miles.
Right.
So, okay. And then one other piece that I think is telling, and I have to give credit to somebody, I forget who, so tell me if it was you. She said in the video, between the information from Jack and knowing the state, that's narrowed me to a 10-mile rectangle. Mm-hmm. It wasn't just that. So I thought of Slough Creek that goes between two different states. If you just use the Wyoming, it's 9.95 miles in the state of Wyoming. Outside of Wyoming, it goes for miles and miles. And I thought, ooh, now I'm in confirmation bias mode, but I was thinking, why did the state matter? It has to be an area that crosses states. That's what I thought. I don't know if it's right, but do you see what I mean, Rudy?
So a couple things.
I see what you're saying, but
let me do this real quick, Rudy. Gather your thoughts. But K-Pro, turn your headset up if you can. It's low for some reason. We did get 2 super chats I want to mention. Basically, Copper Dan said this to you, K-Pro.
I wish you weren't a liar.
That's the super chat from Copper Dan. We also got one from Packer Jack for $5. Thank you, Packer Jack. We hope you get a good draft for your team. Now, Carrie Galloway is saying, talk about I wish you weren't a liar. Carrie Galloway on Thor, the Hint of Riches forum, and here in the chat, that Shannon never went to Slough Creek. I don't know if you can comment on that or not, K-Bro.
This is the first I've heard of that. And so if anybody has, I know it's ironic that I'm saying this because I have my sources. What source did Shannon say that on Facebook and then quickly delete it? Did she say that in a video where she's slamming searchers? Did she say that in a comment where she's playfully telling people to email her with her biggest offer of getting? Where did she say this? Because if it's true, that would be interesting information. But is it like Jack that she's just covering up? I don't know. I want to hear what Rudy has to say because Rudy, it sounds like you're not at Slough or Medicine Wheel. You're going to a whole different area. Am I wrong?
Well, so first of all, whatever conclusion that we would draw here, I'm not sure that that would be anything more than a fun diversion, because even if Jack, like, let's imagine a best case scenario of like how you would confirm this sort of information. Even if Jack posted the email and said, here's the email, like I sent it, here's the location that I was searching. We don't really know what location he gave. And as searcher Jack, he has a motivation to lie.
Yes.
You know, searchers, or at least be misleading. You know, I communicated with other searchers during the time that the chase was active, and sometimes would talk about areas that I had been, but weren't necessarily even my primary area. So we don't even know how protective he was being of talking about the spot that he was searching. And so, yeah, I'm a little torn on how useful the whole exercise is, other than to point out, I really don't think that this is the area that Shannon's talking about. If we look at the timeline too, this is 2018. Shannon's channel's been active for a couple of years, maybe at that point. But there's not a whole lot of videos out there other than her trip to the West Yellowstone area. So we don't know how far she ventured into West Yellowstone. I don't know if it's even worth pursuing all of that, but I don't think she's referring to Slough Creek.
So stuck in Chaselandia. Maybe this answers it, Capro. Stuck in Chaselandia says Shannon said she wasn't sure if it was in the park. All of the Wyoming portion of Slough is in the park. So if it was Slough and being Wyoming, Shannon would know it was national park. Can't be Slough. If Shannon said it wasn't in the park, and I don't know if
well, but here's what she said to me when I asked her in or out of the park. And now we've clarified it, and somebody said they put it up on her comments, and she deleted the comment immediately. Here is what she said. She said she couldn't tell me whether it was in the park or not because she only knows the first location that Jack went recon. Well, Redneck Girl went and asked Jack, where did you find the treasure chest? The place that you went first recon, second, you went to a few. And his answer, you can find it up on Thor, the greatest treasure hunting site on earth. His response exactly was, and I don't remember the exact quote, but it's up there. It was the place I did my first recon. I did 2 or 3 others, but all the evidence took me back to the first location. Well, Shannon doesn't seem to want that out because when somebody posted that on the comment section of her video, she deleted it. She's like, I can't tell you what he told me because I don't know if it's the actual spot. Well, no, we've heard from Jack. He said it was the actual spot. Now, Jack might not be happy that it's out, but those two pieces together, Shannon now cannot say, I don't know if the first spot is or isn't. Jack has confirmed it is. She said that's the reason she didn't want to say, because she said, I don't know if it was his second recon or third recon area. I don't know that for sure. That's what she told me in that text exchange back and forth. And I was like, I'm not going to pressure her on it. And I'm not going to send her emails offering her cash or whatever else she wants. I just think it's informational. That's all.
Nomadic Madman says, could Shannon be helping throw us off the trail to help Jack? That's an interesting thing. We thought she put it out because she knew we would to go live and talk about it. What if she put it out a total 180 from where the actual spot is?
That's a little unverifiable for me. So,
well,
there's a lot of fun speculations going on, but at the end of the day, this is all kind of like third-hand information by the time it's processed through a few people. And that's not accusing anybody of lying. I don't jump to that as a, my first thought. Yes. But once information gets passed down a chain, we know it degrades with each passing. So,
and that's where it was good that Shannon read the exact email. She read the exact exchange. So at least it took it away from the extra link in the telephone chain or game. The one thing that I would say, and maybe you guys know I was upset the other night because I saw the, give me sweet offerings or whatever she said. And I thought, could I be dumb enough that Shannon's playing games? To me, she went through something pretty big in her life and the community really coalesced around her. She does not seem like a game player to me that she would be inventing this. I have erred in the past of who I've trusted in this hunt. And I said I'd eat my left sock if she's playing a game. I didn't like to see the banter that she was telling people to email her and, give her the best offer and all that. And I hope it was just her not realizing and banter, I would be shocked if she's inventing this or hired by Jack. I just think the community came through for her in such a personal way that there's no way. But she said some pretty harsh things. That's where I almost think she's paying it forward to the community without having to say it. And that's why she put some intentional slip ins there. Or maybe that's just what I want to believe because I like her so much. I would be really, really disappointed if it ends up that this is a well contrived. I mean, she accidentally puts on a Facebook page with Forrest Fenners that she knows the location, and then she deletes it, and then she goes on YouTube and accidentally slips. There's a lot of accidents for a really, really sharp lady. There's something here, and I don't know what it is, but if she ends up being playing games, I will be so disappointed. But you have to question everything at this time. Exactly what you're saying, Rudy. You got to try to get out the coincidences, the third hand information, all of that kind of stuff. So where do you end up being? Yeah, I know you didn't want to bias us, but this is a well, and I want to ask the room one question while you answer. Has anybody emailed Jack and said, is this true about you emailing Shannon and saying, one, you gave your location up, and two, don't say anything? If you have, put it in the chat. Put at KPro so I see it. Rudy, what is your what do you have to say? Where do you end up with all this, or have you just thrown it all out?
Yeah, I don't see speculating about this stuff to be super useful in terms of solving the poem. So this is what I think Forrest would refer to as the entertainment side, where we come up with ideas and talk about them, and there's a few juicy tidbits, but they don't seem to get us closer to figuring out the answers in the poem. Now, what I do think was positive about the whole process, and you probably saw even more of that on your side, is kind of like the GPS solve, people started all focusing on one idea. And that's only happened a couple of times since the chest was found. And I've tried to not discourage that because I think part of that collaboration might be necessary to get us to a conclusion that at least some of us like. And but what's better this time is people are more skeptical now. And I was very skeptical. I probably said some harsh things about the GPS solve back during that time. But I was excited about the fact that people were working through it and working to at least eliminate the ideas that aren't correct and putting more attention into trying to disprove an idea and not just build evidence for it, which can often just be confirmation bias. And one of the ways to get around that is to have that group effort where people can give a check to each other and go, I read through the entire thread on Thor. There's a pretty long one there about Slough Creek that is growing by the day. And I think you see a real good example of just healthy banter there where people are going, hey, could this be something or could this be something? And there's other people going in that are providing opposition views to that solve. It doesn't work for me in the end, what's been presented so far, but I think working through that process is very useful. And I think we should continue doing that sort of thing.
Okay, so at the end of the day, and I learned a lot from the GPS solve. And I got to tell you, when Michael was on, a lot of people have been talking about the Department of the Interior because of what Michael had, and he's not willing to name his source. I investigated a little bit and I inquired directly and trying just to, I can see from the outside when it's one or two or three removed. When somebody hears it from Forrest, obviously we can't get the Forrest piece, but when we hear it more directly, it's easier. And it's interesting, even the little bit of information that I got, it's still, it makes it, half of me knows we're learning from it, but half of me knows this makes chaos. Half of the people believe now in Department of Interior. Some people are team Slough Creek. Some people are like, no, now it's the medicine wheel. Some people are like, no, you throw that all together. I'm still in New Mexico. And we are truly in kind of still chaos mode, but at least we're learning through it. Like GPS solve after this one, I was like, I'm just bringing you the information. I'm not putting 5 exclamation points. I'm not saying it's confirmed. We are not. We're learning through it, which I think is good. But also, I don't know. It's kind of like when you first fall in love, you're so pure, and source, the turd source that I don't like anymore, he took that away. So when you fall in love the second time, you're guarded and it's not as pure. So one of these could come up, and I don't know. I guess I found love again, so it's okay. You have to go through turd sources to get to the true loves of the chase, but I don't know. That was a lot of.
Well, now a lot of people in the chat, Rudy, are thinking that you, with the 10-mile reference, you're talking about Madison River. Somebody said it from Wyoming border to Madison Junction is 10 miles. Somebody said the Madison River between Wyoming and MJ, Madison Junction. Yeah, Madison, Wyoming and Madison Junction. Is that what you're thinking or no?
That seems like a better description of a horizontal one to me.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are more interested in the, having it being on a border of Yellowstone. And of course, if you look at the east entrance, there's Middle Creek that actually crosses the Yellowstone border there. It's also about 10 miles long, also rather horizontal. My main point there is not that I have evidence for a specific spot, only that I cannot see Shannon possibly be talking about the Slough Creek area, given the way that she visually described it. I don't think any searcher would have come up with that without seeing the other details.
Okay.
So I just don't think she's talking about that.
Well, and I do think it'd be interesting, especially a lot of people are saying they emailed Jack in different ways, but nobody's asked him. I know a couple people, and him not answering would even be informational. So
Sure.
I know a couple of people that talk to him daily. So I will see if one of them can ask the question. But ask him the question. Those of you guys that are corresponding quite frequently, ask him the question. If he doesn't answer, that's interesting. If he does answer and says yes or no, that would be interesting. It'll be, no matter what, we do have one source that is Jack. I believe he is the finder. I don't necessarily believe he's the pure finder without any assistance or some shenanigans. I'm still waiting for that.
That's fair.
Yeah. So let's ask Jack. I'm not asking Jack. You guys can ask Jack.
I've observed. Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Oh, go ahead, Rudy. Go ahead.
I've observed that Jack has been pretty free to answer questions, probably way more than we expected when he announced himself as the finder. But if you look at all of his questions as a whole, and I know you guys did a video on that a while back with the questions that were gathered on Thor, the Reddit folks have also put together a similar list that's even more comprehensive, but probably even less verified. But you can start to see patterns of the types of questions that he answers. And he seems to answer questions that won't confirm a solution, even though occasionally he'll rule out things that could be rabbit holes or whatnot. But in terms of motive, I understand that a lot of people are skeptical of his account of events. And the stuff that I'm going to go over here tonight, I think you have to look at it in terms of, if you want to be critical of it, it needs to be more than just that's what Jack said. Because as long as it lines up with how Forrest told us to solve the poem, I still think it could be a valuable pathway to get from where we are to some sort of satisfying conclusion.
Yeah, and I like that because, I know what Mike says. If you email, let's say the GPS solve was correct, and you email, is GPS in it? Let's just say for the sake of discussion, and there's a reason that Jack is hiding it, he's going to say no. If you say, was Slough Creek it? Because Shannon said it.
Yeah, he's going to say it. Yeah.
I don't think he's going to boldface lie unless there's a reason he has to. I think he's being as cryptic as he can, trying to be engaging, but he won't lie unless he needs to. But direct questions like, is GPS in it? If GPS was, that would be an easier way to find out. So I think there's sometimes that he may need to not be as forthright. He's not on the stand. He's allowed to keep some things to himself because his non-answer is an answer. So I like what you say, though. You're going to take Jack as a starting point, but it needs to be backed up with Forrest. Now there's been some times that he contradicts Forrest. So if he contradicts Forrest, do you rule that out?
Essentially, yes, but sometimes those could just be scenarios where you're not using your imagination well. We could have very set preconceived ideas of what's being talked about, my first approach would be to see if those can be reconciled logically. But even that seems like it may be a waste of time, because I think ultimately we still have to solve the poem. And just reconciling statements is somewhat of a side diversion. I don't pay a whole lot of attention to things that seem to be contradictory, and I don't think there's that many that don't have a reasonable explanation.
Well, so this is kind of what Jack says his exercise was. He has to rule out all the noise. This is how I interpreted. And every time it wasn't something that he could actually confirm independently, it was too much confirmation bias and noise, and he had to kind of redirect. So it sounds like you're using the same technique, but on Jack.
Well, I'm trying to copy it, because if we assume that he did find the chest, which not everybody agrees with, but I tend to think is mostly accurate, then let's follow the method. And people have judged the motives of him talking to searchers. Like, it's a little unusual, his level of engagement. I mentioned earlier, I don't think we really expected that. So I don't usually speculate on stuff, but I'm gonna dive in just briefly into what I think his motive might be. And I think his real motive is he's trying to avoid a news cycle that confirms this sort of thing. You know, we already got 2 or 3 news cycles out of the chase. I saw it mentioned multiple times on the CNN homepage, which isn't necessarily the herald of good journalism, but you know, if another, you know, if Jack came out and said, here's where I found the chest, here's what got me there, it's going to generate another news cycle, another wave of interest, other potential problems. And I think that's what he's trying to avoid. And he's even noted specifically, when someone asked him, what if somebody else like figures it out and publishes it? And he goes, I'm going to have to paraphrase, I don't have it in front of me, but he basically said, I don't care, like nobody's going to believe it unless it comes from me.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, we might be able to see the correct solve and go, yes, this is correct, but without him confirming it, it's not going to run on national news in that way. The last 2 news cycles I think we're going to get out of the chase are the chest going up for sale and the chest being sold.
Do you think
I don't think we're going to get one with a
Do you think
reveal.
Barbarosi's book coming out might make some press? And like,
oh yeah, that's I'm kind of referring as a separate thing, but I mean directly regarding the find of the treasure chest.
Okay.
I think it's going to be the sale is going to be the next couple of cycles, but I don't know what else the national news would generate out of this. And I think, you know, I think his motives are to avoid that particular news cycle happening, which talking to other searchers doesn't really endanger that, because they could figure it out. And, you know, let me see if I can find the quote here. So this is Jack responding to someone asking, like, what if the correct solution was posted? He said, I think a lot of people probably would be underwhelmed and think it was too simple and straightforward. The key is not the solution, but rather the evidence that that's how he, Forrest, saw it.
The evidence.
Well, so we don't know.
Yeah, what evidence is there on how Forrest saw it? I wonder what he means by that.
I don't know.
Yeah, is it the book?
If I find out, we're going to come back and talk about it.
Right.
Well, it's funny because we know a searcher that right now went boots on the ground and said, so sure, can't believe didn't see it before, has been piecing together all of what Jack is saying. I'm going boots on the ground, never been so confident. And I'm like, I don't know what you're looking like. Are you looking for a divot or what? Like, no, just have to get there to see. And it's interesting. There's a group of searchers looking at all the slip ups. It is amazing if you watch a video now, and I don't know if you've done this, Rudy. I watched so many Forrest Fenn videos before the find. I look at them completely differently. I'm looking for a slip up. I'm looking for when he talks that he's alone. I'm looking for that little bit of a slip. I'm just, and there's details that I never have seen before, or never recall remembering as important. Are you going through that same process right now?
Yeah, I can identify feeling that more as my positions have shifted. I'm not married to any particular solve idea right now, because I haven't seen what I like, and I haven't seen the evidence the way that it's described. If a few years from now we still don't have anything and this process doesn't play out, I might abandon it and go back to something else, but I'm not spending the same level of time on it. as I was a year ago either. So it's, but yeah, I mean, even reading through The Thrill of the Chase back in the day, over like each year that I read it, I saw new things that tied into, or at least I thought tied into ideas that was working at the time. I was obviously in the wrong state, but I think somebody is going to line all these pieces up and put this story together. And I think sort of priming our minds on what to look for and what type of solution we need to find is going to be helpful in identifying it. And my one criticism, jumping back to the Slough Creek thing for a minute, is the easiest thing to fall into is when you're trying to like make something fit a space, is to just overuse the place names. And I don't think that's how it's going to work. I don't think it's going to be a string of 9 place names that sort of loosely match an idea. That's kind of just the basic level of a treasure hunt. I think when Forrest means it's simple, and when Jack confirms that it's also simple, I think it's because the directions are very simple, not necessarily that they just are word associations.
Well, and I agree with you. They're not going to just be place names, because that would be quote unquote too easy. When Jack said and focused on the definitions of words, and Forrest has echoed that all the different years, I don't know if it's a certain dictionary, a certain level of definition, what definition means, what it is. I think there is a cleverness about the words or definitions in some way. And everybody can tell me your thoughts
Yes.
on it, but I just think that's the piece that's going to make the aha moment of the difference between Home of Brown being, Tom Brown, and Brown meaning something else. And I don't know what that something else is. Is it a type of certain dictionary? Is it a type of this, that? Is it a certain definition? Is it always the third one down in a certain, though I've heard lots of different, but both of them emphasizing definitions of words and how definitions don't, what you think today. I just watched a Forrest video about what you think today, your layman's term definition is not the one in the dictionary. And then Jack echoes it. I just think there's something important there.
Yeah, and Forrest even said that he sort of twisted the definitions a little. Like, it wasn't just that a word was misspelled, he misused it, but in a way that still made sense.
Right.
So there's something about that to it. You'd said you'd gotten a bunch of.
Go ahead.
You'd said you'd gotten a bunch of questions about the comparing stories thing, and I noticed that afterwards that was at least a couple of the threads got some renewed attention on Thor, particularly the Totem Cafe Caper one. And one of the people on Thor, I think it was Blazing Waddles, commented on it. I don't remember the exact quote, I didn't save it here, but he did an interesting analysis talking about how that story could be construed to point to Yellowstone. And then I was reading through Jack's answers and I came across this quote. It's a little bit longer one, but basically the person's approach on Thor using the document that I'd created was looking at not the individual word changes, but how those words change the story of a whole. So this is a really subtle change, and you'd have to read his piece to see what he did with it. But then Jack added this in one of the answers, talking specifically about comparing the stories between the newspaper and how they're published in The Thrill of the Chase. And he says, this is Jack's words, how he has changed how he's presenting himself in the book, and maybe between the lines, you can find some evidence of that intent. A lot of the stories that were originally published in the West Yellowstone News are now available on the Bozeman Daily Chronicle website. They have quite a few edits. I mean, it's often, a word or two each paragraph that add up over the course of the story. And I put those two together and I went, wait a second, this guy on Thor has maybe identified what's actually, how this could actually work, which is not looking for a word that's added isolated by itself, but how is Forrest hiding like a new idea into the whole story in how it's presented? So that,
Well, so let's go back for a couple seconds because
sure.
there was a couple pieces that I think may have been lost in the chaos of everything that's been coming out. One, Jack has said one of the key ways that he found the key way to crack this was finding stories in TTOTC that had been previously published that have key differences. Correct?
Yes.
I have no idea how I missed this. That succinctly. Now, I think it was Chasing Indy, and I know she's in chat, so you can say it if it was you. Someone sent to me an email between Jack and whoever it was that said, I thought My War for Me was the most important to Forrest. And he said, but it can't be to solve things because the My War for Me story is almost identical to how it was published before the hunt began. Rule it out as finding hints, which I went, okay, so we can rule out, it seems like we can rule out the chapters that previous publications have not been significantly different, or at least different. It sounds like My War for Me, which is where he kind of pointed everybody, isn't different. I just want to make sure everybody's up to date with this epiphany I had of what I didn't know. This didn't hit my radar at that same level. I talked to Cynthia and she's like, oh, that's been out for a while. That's why we're all doing comparison analysis. So that's how you understand it, right, Rudy?
Yeah, I heard the same statements that you did. I haven't compared My War for Me, but I interpreted Forrest's statement regarding it. I mean, we can take that at plain value and just, this is a very important story to him. It doesn't mean that that's a hint that, you know, you got to read My War for Me several times because it'll tell you where the treasure chest is. I think sometimes we don't have to read anything extra into what he's saying other than what Forrest said specifically.
So let me do a couple things, K-Pro. First, we got some super chats we got to deal with. Not 242 walk with the $5 super chat says it's a double because we get two. They say, your creek, if you've been wise, your quest, your effort, if you are brave, I give you title. Just who are you in the poem? So maybe, and a lot of people thought this, if we figure out how the you is that Forrest is talking about, maybe that helps us out. But there is some breaking news, everybody. There's actually two pieces of breaking news. And the first one is 3D Bronze, tell me who. 3D Bronze with the super chat. He wants everybody to know that his new treasure hunt, Tell Me Who, he did tell me where. Now this one's Tell Me Who, drops at 10 p.m. Pacific tonight. So go to 3dbronze.com at 10 p.m. tonight. That's in a little bit over 2 hours from now. And you'll be able to see you know how he did the last one. You'll see how he did the new one. We'll see what the prizes are. And 3D Bronze, give me updates and we will update it on the show here as always. So thank you for the super chat, guys. But we also have some more breaking news from Chasing Indy. This one's kind of interesting. She just sent it to me over Facebook Messenger and I'm going to show it.
Okay, wait.
Yeah, it's a breaking news, K-Pro.
Okay.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I just.
What?
Okay, go ahead.
You don't want me to show it?
No, I'm not saying that. I know, and I love you, Indy. You have a new breaking news every day, and if we distract to that, we're not going to get to the content that Rudy wants to get to. I love you, Indy. I'm not saying that, but you asked me why should I go on live on Tuesday? Because what would I say? This breaking news on your channel when we do this off the cuff at the last second during the show, and it takes us down a different rabbit hole than what we prepared with our panelists. I think it devalues our show. That's just my opinion. Show anything you want.
Okay. Well, I want Rudy's opinion and your opinion on this. We know that Jack said that Forrest slipped up. So Chasing Indy thinks this might be how he slipped up. And I'm going to show everybody here. This is from the California Sunday Magazine. And I don't think I'm familiar with this article. The California Sunday Magazine. This is Forrest talking. There were other F's out there, but they're obliterated now. Such ravages of time are often on his mind now that he's nearing his 85th birthday. So this is back in like 2013, Indy says. Though Fenn remains matter of fact about the prospect of his days coming to an end. If I get Alzheimer's, I'm going to flag my calendar for 6 months from now and do it my own way, he told me. Hopefully at my last dying gasp, I will still go back to that place and die at my favorite He trailed off, perhaps wary of giving out a clue. Chasing Indy thinks that the slip up is that he said my favorite and then cut off. What is Forrest? And I would like your two opinion, K Pro and Rudy Green. What has Forrest always said was his favorite place? What do you think?
Okay, I'll chime in first since I did this with Indy about noon today for an hour.
Mhm.
So I do not believe anything that in print, we didn't talk about this part, we can hold to. We know that Jack has said it has to be, it was videos that he took. And we had a long conversation with the group that's working on slip ups. You can't take anything there. I think the favorite definitely could be, I said maybe, but I don't think this is the slip up that Jack is talking about. I think when we need to focus on the slip up, it's going to be in video. I also do not believe that Forrest was in any sort of Alzheimer's. He might have been into some memory loss. I had some long discussions with him because of a personal situation I was dealing with. But those that, those that he had some correspondence with or discussions with, I don't think he was slipping up due to Alzheimer's. I think he worried about it. Anybody at 90 is going to.
But that's not the point of the article. That doesn't mean he had Alzheimer's. That's not what Candy's saying, right? But
that was the discussion we had on that exact thing that you just put up for a long time today.
But where did Jack say it was a video interview? In other words, an interview can be print or video. Is that something that Jack said?
Jack said the Mad Dogged reporters at his home. He also has said 100 different times when anything came out on print, he's like, God, they get it wrong even in the quotes. And I talked to Cynthia about this when this group, this slip up group that's looking at videos, we were like, do we even look at printed? And we're not starting there. And the reason or we didn't start there. And the reason for that is reporters get it wrong. There was something that Cynthia got quoted in. She's like, it's not what I said. And it's so important to get every word right. I think Jack, if Jack was looking at this methodically, he would not look at it, kind of like what Rudy was saying. It's 1 degree out if you don't see it from Forrest's lips. If you see a reporter saying it with a quote, and Forrest has even had to correct reporters when they put out gobbledygook. I have probably 15 different articles that have came out that I'd say, Forrest, you said it was buried. And he's like, never said it. They say it wrong. Never trust a reporter unless you hear it out of my mouth. And that's what I believe. But did Jack ever say, do not look at and only look at videos, do not look at news reports that are in a written word? No, but the group that I'm working with, which is some of the best treasure hunters there are, we all agreed to rule out for now any printed word because of that. What do you think, though?
I would agree that pretty much with everything that you said there. It's already a degree of separation away, and so the subtlety of a slip up is lost from being able to be identified. I think it has to be something that we can confirm is in Forrest's own words, and I think Jack would have had the same standard of evidence.
And Chase,
he said it so much more eloquently. He basically said the same thing, but he said it nicely and in like 12 words, and I said it after 10.
Well, Chasing Indy thinks it's his favorite fishing hole. Forrest was about to say my favorite fishing hole and stopped after favorite, but she thinks that's a 9 mile hole. I mean, isn't that too easy? Isn't that a very popular search spot? And wouldn't that be too easy? I don't know. That's just my opinion.
No, I think it definitely could be favorite fishing hole. He actually in a video says something about my favorite and trails off. This was on Amy Seeks. I think that could be. I can't take that from that particular article, even if it might be. I don't think that's what Jack took. I don't think Jack took that article and went from it there. That's my opinion, but that's
okay. Yeah. Well, Candy said she'll go live after this and tell everybody what it is. So, all right. All right. Back to what you were saying, Rudy.
Back to Rudy.
Sorry. Sorry for that interruption.
To finish out the comparing stories stuff, one thing came to light. I was talking to somebody on Reddit, and has anybody read Rumblings and Ramblings? Because I didn't actually sit down and read that. But I'm wondering if there's stories there that also could be compared to the Thrill of the Chase, aside from just the 6 that were included in the newspaper. So I know
Yes,
that
and
document was going around even before it was publicly released. And so it seems like the sort of thing that Jack might have been able to get a hold of.
Well, and what I heard, and I've not seen it, someone told me they asked Jack, and Jack said he had a copy of it. And I said, I'm not putting that out until because we know now it's public, but it wasn't public at the time. It actually never caught my attention enough. I talked to Cynthia, and she was like, it was critical because that was really the first version, if you will, of any of the stories. So the comparison she did was out of Rumblings and Ramblings. So I, though, said, unless I see it actually in Jack's words, I can't put it out to the community. That's what he had as kind of a source document. And that person never got back to me. They're like, well, I have it. I just wanted you to know. And this is where it's like everyone else. I appreciate stuff, but after I got burned by GPS source jerk, I'm not going to be just putting everything out as fact. So I don't know.
Well, I have a copy of it too. I mean, now that it was published on
everybody
Dale's blog.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm going to put it on my list to tie in and see if there's some more comparisons there, and maybe this idea of looking at the stories as a whole document with some subtle messaging within it as a whole, I think might be valuable. So that's kind of what I'm
here's
working
what
on with that.
Holy said, I emailed Jack. He said he hadn't read Rumblings and Ramblings until after. Well, that's it. And Holy is one I've known long enough. I don't, kind of like Shannon, I wouldn't, she's not a shenanigans person. She's a straight shooter. I would say. So I think some are trying to put shenanigans where they say, oh yeah, dive into that, when they might know the opposite. But Holy saying that there, I'd love to see if you take out all the information, then we can get it posted, and that puts that baby to bed. But okay, so you've done comparisons. There's what? You've done 6 or 7?
There's 6 total, but it was 4 different articles that appear in the Bozeman Chronicle, but they were split into 6 stories ultimately. I think 4 of them in the Thrill of the Chase, and then 2 that later were published in Too Far to Walk.
Well, it's interesting you bring up Too Far to Walk, because in the Jack AGK hints that he dropped, or when he called in, he was like, I think it's a place that Forrest went alone. And he talked about Philadelphia, the thumb of Philadelphia, the waterfall. And then he brought up the preface in Too Far to Walk about being on Madison. And then I was like, so is there a hint in Too Far to Walk? But his dedicated piece is, it's only in TTOTC, because what did he do? What did Forrest do at the end? Once Upon a While, he did a bunch of edits to the revised Once Upon a While. Was he pointing us to say, look at the revised stories, not these, but go back to TTOTC? Do you think maybe that's what he was pointing to? This, why did he do a revision of Once Upon a While and not just a new book?
That I don't know, and I was surprised by that when it happened. I only ended up buying the revised edition ultimately, but it was an unusual move for sure. And again, the fear with some of those other memoirs is they open up a lot of almost too much new material to look at other than studying Forrest writing. I think that's where their best value is going to be, determining why he does things and why he writes things in a specific way. And I think it's just going to be hard work. I think it's not going to be as easy as just detecting a misspelling or something like that. I think the finder dug very deep. So, and I don't have the answers yet. But you're right. Going back to the appearances on AGK, we didn't really get into that as much on the last show that I was on, because you had some other great guests with like an attorney and people with really valuable information. But the things that stood out to me were the same. The emphasis on the alone idea and his uncertainty of whether Forrest had ever taken somebody to the spot. Now, it doesn't mean that, maybe Forrest has been somewhere with other people at the starting point, but if the fact that Jack was uncertain about that, if you believe his account, it certainly can't end at a point where he had gone with other people. And I think alone signals even more than that. I mean, it's in the poem in terms of what context to look for in finding this location. Probably the most valuable thing, though, from the AGK appearances, at least for me, was just this feeling of going, okay, this guy was actually a searcher. He called into AGK. I've called into AGK, and it was over a period of time. I think it does shut down the conspiracies. Well, not for everyone, but I think it shuts down the conspiracies for a lot of people that this was somebody that Forrest hired as like a last second thing. It's not really the sort of thing that you would set up this fake ending, years in advance and have somebody pretend to be a searcher that long. Whatever things and missing details that we don't know about how the chase ended, I just don't think he's a hired person there.
I don't think he's hired by Forrest by any means. I think there may have been a whole bunch of either coincidences or things that happened in the last few months of the chase / Forrest life that makes it the biggest coincidences known on Earth, or there might have been something a little more to it. I now believe, exactly like you said, between the AGK, the pictures of him sitting there with Forrest, he is the person that located the chest. I believe he was a searcher in that area for a long-term time. Did he get a little nudge at the end because Forrest needed to end this? I have an eventual PowerPoint that you will see that I'm at about a 65% that I go back and forth. Yeah, it's a total conspiracy theory.
It
and
is.
It is not. Forrest is actually, nothing has been dishonest in any of the press releases by anyone with my theory. So that's where, and I don't think the family is involved. And so if you add all those together, if there's a way that Forrest isn't a liar, none of the press releases are not accurate or accurate. We know some things, what was happening with Forrest and his health. I know a few more things that I may put out there. You add all that together, I'm starting to lean of Jack was a searcher, but it needed to end, and it ended when Forrest needed it to end. And I think
Yeah, that's going to be a good one. We should probably do that night Monday.
I
Or
laid
maybe
it
over the
out for
weekend.
Mike.
You never
I
know.
laid it out for Mike because Mike's like, no. And I'm like, okay, take these 10 or 12 things that happened and let me lay them out this way. And his was, I see what you're saying now. Like, it makes me pause that way. So that's, but again, Forrest wasn't a liar. There's no misinformation in the press or any of that. So, but
Well,
that's not tonight.
make sure you subscribe because me and K-Pro may just go over live over the weekend. Subscribe, hit the bell. You guys will be notified. We got a $20 super chat from Indiana Jones who says, Forrest said he dreams about what might happen someday. That movie, The Happening, with Mark Wahlberg, is about mass suicides that start occurring around the world. Maybe a precursor of things to come. Indiana Jones, you're a weird dude, and I have no idea what you're talking about. But thank you for the super chat. That movie, Mark Wahlberg was horrible in that movie. The Happening, M. Night Shyamalan Ding Dong movie, by the way. Okay.
Okay, and I just will say I'm going to do a shout out to Mark Wahlberg. When I was a teenager, he was the only poster I was allowed to have on my wall because my dad didn't think of him as a rapper, even though he was, or whatever. My daughter thinks like he's reinvented himself as like a mainstreamer now. She's like, oh, he's awesome and all of this, even though he's old. So I'm just saying, Mark Wahlberg, he's Marky Mark, right? That's the same guy, right?
Yes,
Okay.
and he's got a reality show that was just on Netflix. I think I watched
And he's
it.
Wahlburgers burgers. She'll
Yeah,
actually have a
Wahlburgers.
burger if she's able to get. So, okay, so let's go back to, you guys are going to see more of that later. Let's not talk conspiracies tonight. See, I'm even censoring myself, Indy. It's not just you on a tangent. I'm trying to stay on task for Rudy tonight. Otherwise, we would go 16 hours. So you've analyzed the stories because that's what Jack has told us to do. Forrest backs that up as well of look at my different stories. He didn't say it. I think that's what he was hinting to once upon a while. What else are you kind of helped and worked with somebody on Reddit on analyzing everywhere he's been on AGK. What else do you think is important to do kind of the hard work for the people that are willing, to put in the time? What do you think, what else do you think is important to focus on? Because let me ask you this before I continue. In 1 year, what do you think the chances are that we're going to know the location?
I don't know that we'll ever know the location. I know. I'm gonna throw a bucket of cold water on that idea. But I think we can come to a location that we are confident in. So not everybody's going to grab onto it,
Sure.
but
So that we have a consensus, a majority consensus. What do you
it's
think?
probably not going to even be a majority. But I think still right now there's a lot of individuals who believe in themselves, but we've never even really decided on a starting point. So
So never. You're
What
just
if where Warm Waters Halt really was Madison Junction? What if so many people were right and just couldn't put it together from there? Wouldn't that be something if somehow it came out that was where Warm Waters Halt?
well, it could be. I mean, I think most serious searchers at least considered that. I used it as my starting point for the first 3 years, well, 2 years basically of the chase. I was searching outside of the park
Right.
primarily, but it's one of those ones that's really hard to disprove, particularly because of its connection to Forrest. But yeah, it's been searched a lot.
That's the whole Baker's Hole. You go up to that area. I mean, it's just very popular. That's what
There.
Candy's going to talk about. But yeah, chasing it. He says, "You guys are killing me right now." And for more discussion, I just want to mention that Greg GTC, he's got a new channel called Dark. What's it stand for? Not lights out. Oh, drinks and random conversation. DARC. So Dark is in the chat. So you guys check out Greg Saturday night.
So Minotaur says it just doesn't make sense. What searcher would ever search for 28 days without knowing 100% it wasn't there?
But he did know, didn't he?
But wait a minute. I know at least 10 searchers that searched their location a lot more than 25 times. They never gave up to it. Forrest even had me write one because he's like, she's wrong. Help me. She's going too deep. She's sacrificing her family. Help me. And I typed like, you are at the wrong location. The treasure chest is not there. Stop searching. And it was, oh, Forrest, you just want to make sure I'm dedicated to my solve.
Right.
So I know a lot of people like that. And that's the story we're being told. Do we know that that's the case? Because he said 25 days boots on the ground, but now he's saying he had 2 other areas that he recon. Well, how many days did he go to those 2 other areas? Shannon said recently he only went out twice, 2 different trips. And everyone blew her up and said, where did he say that? Oh, that's just what my guess was. Or, I thought I saw that somewhere. So we're starting to get a little bit of shiny stuff guesses. I've done it too. So
Tony Rusi points out, stick your toe in Madison Junction. It's cold. That goes back to the whole is it warm thing. Yeah, I don't know.
Some people still don't think. I put out last night, I don't know if you saw on Thor, I've started to maybe dip my toe in putting out some stories. Forrest and I were sitting somewhere preparing for one of the events. I don't know if a couple different events, doesn't matter. And he's like, I hate a cold room. I'm like, you hate the cold? He's like, I hate it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't dislike it. I hate it. And I said, I hate a hot room because you can always layer up. And we had this whole discussion and he's like, I said, so what's your definition of warm? And he's like, comfortable. And of course we're now bantering because I'm like, comfortable. Does that mean you like so I said, your final spot, would it be somewhere that's cold? And he's like, I can tell you, no, I hate the cold. He hated the cold. He loved to be in a warm place. Now, it wasn't at all about the treasure chest or all of that. Cause I'd be like, oh, I told him I'm going to put this out. This is going to say the final spot better not be where it's cold. And he's like, just make sure it's after I die because people will go crazy. I put that up on Thor and Facebook yesterday. Anyway, okay, let's get Rudy. Stop talking so much. Let's get back to you. Where else are you going to put your time into analysis?
Well, I think one of the next steps for me is to be tackling Homa Brown, because I think these are going to, even Jack said he wasn't certain with his Where Warm Waters Halt until he solved later clues. I imagine we've identified amongst all the searchers the correct Where Warm Waters Halt. We just don't know which one it is. So I think those in combination and taking a serious look at probable starting points, eliminating ones that go against parameters or too much of a stretch, And then putting the effort in on the Homa Brown clue might yield some results in terms of, it was too easy for many of us to maybe just drop in something lazy there. I did it myself, like using brown trout, for example. That might work at Nez Perce, but that's not really something specific when you're just considering the length of a waterway, perhaps. I think that would give us a major step towards if there could be evidence that Homa Brown was being solved in cohorts with the starting point. That would be a big aha moment for me. So that's more of just a brainstorming phase. So I can't, tell you those answers yet. I will say in terms of my own opinion, I have changed my opinion on Yellowstone. I basically ruled it out when I first visited the area in 2017 on my very first boots on the ground, just because it just seems like it would be difficult to get somewhere private in there. And that was kind of my reasoning. But since then we've had, who was it, Michael on the show, who talked about the Department of the Interior. Yes, it's a couple degrees removed. And I saw his data in the emails as well. But that's a point in favor of potentially the national park space. And even maybe more so than that is Jack's reluctance to rule it out.
Well, so I want to go back for a second.
Okay.
So Michael O'Connell had asked a group of searchers to get together to analyze his information that he got directly of Department of Interior. Rudy was one of those searchers. And you had agreed to be a part of that conversation. But you never saw anything directly. So were you just more interested in seeing something directly? Like, why did you believe it? Did you know Michael? Were you just kind of up for it? What were you, because we did have one decline. Like, why would you say, yeah, I'm willing to put my time into what could be kind of something big, but also a nothing burger if the source isn't revealed?
Well, I don't have any way of judging the validity of that particular piece of evidence by itself. So really, that's one portion of a few different things that made this catalyst for me going, maybe I ruled out Yellowstone too soon, and as part of excluding all of these places, I need to at least put that back on the table. Because Yellowstone was kind of treated like a separate state among searchers. It's like, well, you're searching in the park, you're searching outside of the park. Like, it was its own little territory. And very early on in the chase, I ruled out New Mexico, ruled out Colorado for reasons that I still think are valid. And then I ruled out Yellowstone, but my primary reason for doing so is just the fact that it just seemed a little too busy to be able to hide a chest there. And I was there in April the very first time, and it was busy then. And of course, you know what it looks like in June or July when the real tourist traffic shows up. But I don't think that by itself was a good justification for me ruling it out. Michael's info, and then the other one I was going to say is Jack's reluctance to rule it out, because it would benefit him to do so in terms of the potential. Forrest said finding this would be opening Pandora's box. Maybe if you found it in a spot where there would be questions about ownership, do you really want to test that? We know Forrest spent $7,000 or whatever, in theory with the attorneys, but how far do you want to push that to set a legal precedence? And it coincides well with his, keeping very secret about it and not wanting to confirm any details of the solve. Those may all line up. So I'm just saying I've flipped in the sense that I don't rule out Yellowstone anymore. I consider it equally probable as any other spot in Wyoming.
So I got two things. One, Minotaur Moreno says to both K-Pro and Rudy, it took 10 years to be found. It took the finder 25 days on site to find the chest. Can we agree that means at least one of the clues in the poem is likely terrible? What do you guys think?
Well, I think the 25 days is probably an inflated number, because you have a tendency when you're writing those sorts of stories or giving details for those sorts of stories to round up to make it sound more interesting. And I'm not calling it a lie. I'm just saying there's 2 travel days if you're flying back and forth to your search area. Does that count as part of the 25 days? If you make 5 trips and there's 2 travel days on each end of them, well, half of your time was just traveling.
Then there's a day to go to West Yellowstone as a tourist and just shop, or
sure.
get pizza or whatever.
All of my trips, I might consider them a boots on the ground trip, but I always brought friends along, and we'd go tool around in Yellowstone or Montana after, having yet another unsuccessful boots on the ground.
Well, I'm going to say it totally opposite, though. I'm going to kind of agree with Holly. She said terrible, AKA damaged. Jack said he was in the hunt from when he got TTOTC 3 weeks. He solved it. He went out there. There was a broken blaze. So yes. I would actually say it was too easy. But if you're going to say if there's one terrible clue, it was the blaze because it was broken. The only thing that took him 25 days is to brute force the end where now we can rule out a tree, a marking on a tree. He was in a bunch of rocks, in my opinion, and one of them was supposed to be able to be read. It no longer was because of damage. I would say it was almost too easy. This was supposed to last 1,000 years. It took Jack 21 days to crack it. The only reason it took him 2 years is because he had to go and methodically look at an area that had a damaged clue, and it was critical. My opinion.
Somebody should ask Jack, if the blaze wasn't damaged, would you have walked right to it? Like Forrest said. That's a good question.
He actually commented on that specifically, and he said that he thought it would be very difficult to recognize if you didn't know what you were looking for.
So, and I think that's purposeful by Fenn,
it could have been something very common that you had to be seeking for something specific about it. I don't know.
He also said, somebody said, when did you have to be boots on the ground? And he said everything except for the last clue. He said something like that. I might not have gotten it exactly right, which made me believe you could get everything except for looking down at the blaze. And so he had it all figured out supposedly until then, because he put 21 hard days into this during medical school. Jack, there's something here. It's not passing the sniff test. Not passing the sniff test, Jack.
Well, that's all fun to speculate on, and you could very well be right. I just don't see how resolving any of that gets us closer to a solution. So that's what my blinders are always on, of going, yeah, that's fun. That's a cool idea. But I think most of that can probably be explained in the void of information that we don't have.
Well, there's more noise than I think ever in the chase. So if you are actually looking to try to take now Jack and Forrest information and not get distracted by all of this, it's even harder than before this, because we have chaos of information not verified, etc. William asks, K-Pro, if Jack spent 25 days searching, how can he wait an extra day to retrieve the chest after actually finding it? Because he had to go get drunk, and he didn't want it to be the treasure chest he could have handed it somebody or stolen. He needed to go get drunk first. William, you'd appreciate that. I've had a drink with you at a bar, playing pool.
Let me 2 things. One, Hooli sent an answer from Jack. It's a clarification. I need a sound clip instead of breaking news. It's a clarification. She basically asked Jack, did you read Rumblings and Ramblings before you found the treasure? And Jack says no, but I read it after someone posted it to Reddit. So that's and I actually have the email, but I'm not going to show Hooli's email. So that's confirmation from Jack that he read Rumblings and Ramblings after he found the treasure chest, after somebody posted it to Reddit. And the other thing is, did I just lose it? What do you guys think of this? Mark Connor says he couldn't have been in the park for 25 days. The park was closed until the 1st of the month that he found it, June. It was closed because of COVID. Not saying he couldn't have been there if it was outside the park. Do we know if the 25 days was within the same day that he found it? Or could the 25 days have been like the year before? In other words, he searched that area, but it doesn't have to be all at the same time. Kind of what you were saying, Rudy, that it could have been, is it 25 days of searching, or is it 3 different trips that made up 25 days? Did he ever clarify?
I think it's cumulative over the years. I think he did clarify on that specifically. I don't have it in front of me, but I think somebody asked.
Well, our source, the turd source, as K-Pro says it, said it was last year. The 25 days was last year. Then he figured it out from home and went right to it when he came back when the park opened. He's just waiting for the park to open.
He's a turd.
Turd source.
Okay. Yeah, that's his name forevermore.
And
Jack,
Mr. F off. Okay.
no, Mr. Fob. It was so clever before you guys made it dirty. Okay, Fendi says Jack is programmed not to tell us the truth. Why are we listening to him? So, Rudy, this is actually a really important question. As much as I believe Forrest may have slipped here and there, and so maybe have done a little bit of counterintelligence, I don't think he ever lied. That's why he never said buried. That's why he never. Jack, if he has this secret, which I think is above and beyond, he just wants to keep the area pristine. He may have a vested interest in keeping us away from the final location. Are you taking everything he says as accurate? How, if he lies once, how can we trust any of it? It's a great question. Fendi, who has Fendi and Bear Look for Stuff channel, go see him. But how do you reconcile what you can believe and not believe from this guy we call Jack?
Well, for right now, I'm just assuming that unless demonstrated otherwise, what he's saying is generally accurate in the sense of, can I use this information to try to put together or follow the process to put together the correct solve? And as I said in the opening, I think as long as it's not differing from what Forrest said, I don't see any conflict in that. And I don't think that, at the very least, we should be able to rule out more locations. And that's part of what I'd like to do as well, is focus on all of the different Where Warm Waters halts that have been identified and see if we can start eliminating some of these. I think it would be fair, if we throw all this attention at Slough Creek, for example, to weigh up the pluses and minuses of that. What I've seen so far, I think that one could be eliminated. Maybe, maybe there is something to it. I think it's weak. But we have to be open to testing all those different spots and trying to disprove them. And maybe it may be a scenario where there's just one left standing, where we go, this spot cannot be disproven, and we just disproved everything else. I don't know. I haven't tried to approach it that way. One other thing that I've observed about Jack, maybe particularly from the AGK one, is he uses language that's a little different than how searchers typically speak in terms of confidence. He's talking, not just saying that he knows, he's talking as if he knows things. He's speaking very confidently. You see that from, and you can tell in kind of the subtleties of the language where they use words that indicate more certainty than would be normal for somebody who's just pieced together an idea. We do see that in a few searchers that are just really married to their solves, but you can definitely see his level of confidence even back in 2018 or whatever.
Well, the 2018 one, since he didn't talk about a specific area, I found it fascinating when Jack called in and said, I think it's somewhere that Forrest has been alone. And Toby's like, no, because alone is nice, but you really want to be with somebody. That's what we do as humans. And he's like, well, let me give you some examples. And he kind of held to, no, I really think it's where you go alone. Mm-hmm. And then Toby laid it on thick. He's like, I have my best friend here. And there's places I have been alone, but when I go with my best friend, Shelly, it's so much better. He's like, yeah, but we're talking about Forrest. We're not talking about you. He said it nicer than that, but that's, yeah. And then he's like, well, let me give you, and I think Toby cut him off and it's like, yeah, but think of the summer solstice, the first time you go, and then you look at the sunset, the next time you want to go with somebody. And he's like, okay, something else I want to bring up, because I felt like I am dug in. I know 100%. He didn't need to say it. This is right. And when I have the treasure chest one day, you guys remember these words. It's somewhere Forrest talks about going alone in TTOTC. Maybe not the exact spot, but there's an analogy. I almost think you can rule out anything in TTOTC that it's him and Peggy, him and others. It needs to be alone. Do you agree? That was big to me, that he did it nicely. He took on the big dog and basically said no 4 different times. What do you think, Rudy?
Yeah, I would agree with everything you just said there. And I haven't read The Thrill of the Chase since sort of refocusing and realigning with the idea of paying extra special attention to the alone idea. So maybe something will pop up when I reread it. And I think that's part of what you were talking about earlier. When you rewatch some of these interviews with Forrest, you've sort of had a few little subtle shifts in your thinking, and you start to see evidence in a different way. And then it becomes a matter of going, does this evidence show intent, or is this just going down the confirmation bias rabbit holes?
Yeah, well, when he talks about a few slip ups, I think the first video, there was a group of us that got on Zoom and we started playing his video. And it was like 30 minutes in, and we had a list of like 30 slip ups. And I'm like, because there's so many that it could be. We know it's only a few, but when you start looking, he talked about definitions. He talked about places he went alone. He talked about all these things, and it's like, oh, this could be, but at least it was a different thought. I think it's a really good exercise on how now that we know the searcher's technique, we don't know what they were, it's kind of cool to go through the process. So you did the comparisons of the stories, we're doing the videos. I mean, there's tons out there though. I think it may be a few years to come, but you add in the noise part, and the noise part brings in the human behavior part. Dan Barbarosi's book is going to be an inflection point. Shannon's live video, good, bad, or indifferent, the GPS solve, source turd, he made an inflection point in the community because people are more skeptical, like you said. Some people to this day are like, I'm angry that you've given up GPS. And, you know, everybody is, it's been, I think GPS was a bigger deal than it was to the few of us we thought it was. It ended up not being, in my opinion, but it became such a big event in the community. I think we're going to have a few more of those that then will have its own consequences, or we'll get some information out of that. Like, I think when Jack comes out, it may not be at his own will. What if he has another lawsuit or whatever, and he has to come out with something that he wasn't intending? That's going to be an inflection point, right?
Maybe. I mean, we'll have to. It's hard to judge a hypothetical when we don't know what hypothetical information came out. So I'm trying to work with, you know, what has been presented so far, and see where it goes. And the process of elimination that I was talking about earlier, that I'm trying to put together a game plan to systematically go through and see if these locations can be eliminated, is based partially on, you know, ideas that I've derived from Jack's statements in terms of, can we throw all these spots out until we get down to one that at least matches with what his idea is correct? And then let's see if that works. I have an example here, if you want me to share an example of like how that could be done.
So what you're saying, just so I understand,
Sure.
you kind of are picking a philosophy or something that stands out to you, and you're kind of testing it. So kind of going down the rabbit hole to see if it works. And if it doesn't, at that first moment, you will stop and then move on. But if it passes the test, you kind of take it as far as it survives, if you will. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Something like that, yes.
Okay.
But in this case here, I'm just trying to really get a home of brown that can be paired with something else, with a starting point.
Okay.
Because, you know, that's the point that Jack identified as a bottleneck in the process. So
super chat from Mr. William with the $5 super chat, actually $4.99. He says, please ask Rudy how he's doing a non-biased analysis when we as searchers already have a biased opinion of the chase. Are
good
you truly
question.
Non-biased?
Well, I'm not biased. My bias is, I can identify at least some of them though, but even knowing them doesn't help you. Well, it helps you a little bit. It doesn't eliminate them, just to know what they are. However, if you're on Team Jack, Jack made a video that goes through all of the cognitive biases and the traps that searchers commonly go into. I don't think many people watched it. I haven't seen it discussed hardly at all since he came out. And there's so much other news and excitement out there. But it's, and also, you know, you could argue that it kind of puts you to sleep. It's not very exciting. It's not entertainment. But I think it's a good presentation, regardless of what you think about him, in terms of identifying how biases can work against you in a solution. I've watched it 4 times now. I think there's a lot of useful material in there,
Nice.
some of which is in my notes.
All right, everybody check out Jack Stoof on YouTube and go watch his one video he's uploaded.
But yeah, the cognitive bias video, I think it's useful no matter what solve you're working on. If you're on Team Slough Creek, like go through those biases. It's not just confirmation bias that can get you. And with each bias, there's a little slide. Somebody might, well, we can't steal his work necessarily, but it'd be nice if you summarize all of just those little checklists and run them against a solution, because I think he's put together a very valuable guide there in terms of how to combat each of those individual biases.
Well, and the interesting part is that was the checklist he used for what we now know he did not know, but we now know as the final location except the blaze. Somebody said in chat in that Reddit database, he said that he went with everything except the blaze. It wasn't the looking down, it was the blaze. He did not have the blaze. He had everything up to the blaze before he went boots on the ground. So that checklist is what I believe he could check off all the way to the blaze. So
Chasing Indy says the cognitive bias video is actually trying to teach you about cognitive mapping. What the hell is cognitive mapping? I don't know.
Mike, okay, Indy, I would like you to call Mike and you get him for 3 hours tonight.
Oh, I'm going on her show when we're done.
Full conversation about this. She gets mad at me because she says I don't listen to her. I do for a long time. I just can't for 3. So Mike wants to hear about it, and he's coming on your show because he just said so for 3 hours.
Hey, Chasing Indy, check it out. What's that? Oh, you don't have one yet. Hey, another treasure hunt in the treasure hunting amusement park, everybody. That'll be another show.
It, you jerk. You're so mean. Okay. Oh, she actually did a video on this too.
Cognitive mapping.
Okay. Because between Jack's video and Indy's video, I don't. Oh God, I'm gonna say something silly, and I don't want to get in trouble. So go ahead, Rudy. Keep going. You were gonna give us one example.
Yeah, I've got an example of just kind of illustrating what I'm looking for in the sorts of answers that Jack's given in a way of eliminating the wrong locations, so that at least the most attention can be put on the ones that seem accurate. And a lot of them were pretty obvious, like, there's physical water in a physical canyon, and maybe that wasn't obvious to everyone, but I think those are more obvious now to the people who believe that account. But the example that I put here ahead of time was Jack was asked a question about whether a searcher crossed or encountered a fence as part of his boots on the ground. And his response, I'll read it exactly. He said, "No, I didn't encounter a fence or barbed wire. If that were involved, the poem would have to mention it, I think." And on the surface, you might say, well, that just tells us that there's no fence or barbed wire along the route. But it also tells us something more, which is the poem mentions very specific details. And too often, I think we create these solves where it's just that limited point-to-point, like 9 waymarks, and we're not reducing the area much. And I think this tells us something about how the area gets reduced, in that we're having to get down to, the poem would have mentioned a fence if it existed along that route. I think you're covering, you're creating some sort of parameters or boundaries very quickly in those last few clues that get it down to just this section of forest. And then you can pair that with a second statement where Jack says, and I'll quote again, "Logic says you have to get at least a little wet at some point on the path. How else would you get cold in the summer?" So he attaches this back to the worth the cold idea and sort of playfully confirms that there's some type of water crossing. Now that could just be, a little mountain trickle running across the trail, or it could be something larger.
But
searchers have speculated.
And this is huge because Sean Dotson asked, do you have to cross water? And Forrest said that'd be too big of a hint, or I don't want to say it. This is exactly that type of thought and the barbed wire, you're exactly right. Barbed wire at a at a general level, okay, it's not barbed wire. No, it's the level of detail that the poem would give about barbed wire. So maybe that's the definition piece or something. These are really good examples. So okay, keep going.
Well, let me wrap it up into the conclusion, and then I'll hear your full analysis. So he's indicating that there's almost certainly some type of water cross in the poem, something that was speculated about a lot. And again, something that Forrest never ruled out. Forrest went so far as to telling us what type of waders to purchase, which, at this point, there'd already been some problems with searchers getting hurt or killed. Like throwing out there, like what waders to buy, it seems that a water crossing is, maybe you don't need waders, but Forrest certainly wasn't willing to rule it out. So it seems like it was more than just, a tiny trickle that you're stepping over, probably something that's submerging your feet in water at a minimum. Otherwise, I think Forrest would have, for safety reasons, gone, okay, let's just rule out the water crossings altogether because people are getting hurt from those, and I just want to be clear. And then Jack kind of confirms it. Now, when we combine those two things, the poem is talking about very specific things that you're going to encounter in the path getting to the chest. Forrest tells us it leads us there. Well, what point in the poem does the water crossing occur?
Effort will be worth the cold. Well, hang on. It could be put in below the home brown as well.
No, it's the cold.
Well, the cold is after the last stanza or later after you've already gone through the 9 clues.
Oh, that's a good point.
Put in could be the water part.
Yeah, put in is a reference to water. A lot of people pick that up there, and immediately following that, we have "It's no place for the meek," which could be in combination with a water crossing.
Right.
And so that's how I think the poem is constructed. Is it's telling us details about the perhaps even a tighter area than we imagined about the geography that we'll encounter in that space.
No, I like that. Okay, go ahead.
$5 super chat from Mr. Billy Shaw Jr., who says, Jack said he figured out what Forrest words meant. Why not use the poem itself for meaning of the words? Treasures equals riches, bold equals brave, halt equals cease. Because Jack also says Forrest slipped up, and I don't think Jack would have figured it out without Forrest slipping up.
I was going to say, because we've done that for 10 years and we got nothing.
We're all doing it wrong.
Yeah. Jack solved it. Well, I would say Jack didn't solve it in 20. He got the book, he solved it, he booked a flight, and he got there in less than 21 days, right? So he did something different. I don't know what it is. Anyway. And I want you guys to know I'm not totally ruling out GPS, but you can't say that's my solve. This is just like if it ends up being Slough Creek. I communicated to you guys information we knew. I happened to go boots on the ground for the GPS one. I didn't come up with GPS. If it ends up being GPS, the only thing is I communicated it. My solve was Nez Perce. My solve was Ojo Caliente. My solve was Lake Heron. Those were my 3 main solves. But that's what we do, is try to bring the information forward, like Rudy knocked it out of the park tonight and has done, because I think how we analyze the poem now and I do think they're going to be slip ups. I think Jack is helping us. He doesn't want us to solve it, because if we solve it, we're either going to destroy it or hit the treasure chest is going to be taken away, depending on which conspiracy theory you believe. So I don't know. I think that's the piece that we have to. I do agree with you, Rudy, though. The thing that you said that has me thinking the most, when the solution comes out, I don't think there'll be a clear consensus that that's it.
No. I think that should be obvious at this stage. We probably all could have, except the finder themselves, we probably all could have openly talked about our solutions and never convinced anybody. But, Forrest said we could have confidence in it. Jack said that it's, essentially self-evident that, it would be obviously correct in some way. But I do think I'm not sure that he even cares if it comes out. He just definitely doesn't want to be associated with confirming it, because it increases problems for him without giving him much benefit. And I think that's a reasonable
Well,
explanation for that.
let me say, other than him thinking the area was going to be damaged, because Shannon says the same thing. And if it's someplace like the medicine wheel, that could be damaged very easily, I believe.
sure.
I don't think security could get out there and rangers could get out there in time if someone really wanted to do damage. Other than that, though, do you believe there's any other reason that Jack do you find there's any evidence that Jack may be not putting the solution out for other reasons?
Well, I think I think there's other reasons, but it's probably a combination of reasons, which is why sometimes those seem in conflict, because it's easier to give somebody one reason than like 5 reasons. So for example, Jack has sort of hinted it's kind of could be a little bit dangerous. Well, maybe there's a water crossing. He doesn't want to take on the responsibility of that. Even a few people going out and visiting a spot are going to track a trail in there. There's no human trails in there right now. And I'm careful when I'm off trail, but you add a few people on top of that, you start building a human trail now. There's the liability issue and the legal questions that would be tested if it was found within a national park or federally managed land. I think all of those in concert sort of wrap up to not giving him any advantage to releasing it, and a lot more advantages to keeping it a secret.
Oh, and then JK says IRS reasons. That might be the case too.
That's fun speculation too. But when you put what's happened is we've heard him give different reasons at different times, and I think the reality is not that these are in conflict, but that they're all a portion of a whole, which is there's no advantage to giving this out.
We got a super chat from William. He says, does Rudy have a conclusion from Jack's responses to an idea what a location looks like from start to finish?
I do, and I pair it with Forrest's statement of, the clues. You remember the debate over the contiguous and continuous phrasing. Forrest has used several different words to indicate that all of this stuff is connected. And in my solves, I've usually centered them along a singular waterway. A lot of other people have as well. They've consistently been wrong, so you probably shouldn't copy my ideas. But I do think that all of the clues are interacting with a single waterway. I think that's a element of the structure of the poem.
Well, I'll make it really short. I was, just because you brought this up, contiguous. I was with Forrest and he said, what is your solve? And I was like, Nez Perce, because I was probably 8 or 9 months in. I was more than halfway into this. No, I was probably a year into this Nez Perce idea that it goes along the Nez Perce Trail, and the battles. And he said, well, what's your WWWH? And I said, well, as you go alone there, that's where Chief Joseph leaves his father's grave. And then the first battle is WWWH, and it's a wildlife habitat. It's an old WWWH was an acronym. And he goes, but then where's your canyon? And I said, well, that's the second battle. The second battle was in the canyon, and it's actually described that way. And he goes, yeah, but and then he did a little slam. Don't you have a PhD? Don't you know what contiguous means? And I said, yeah, it's touching. And he goes, or touching or shares a border, I think is the definition that I said to him. And he goes, then how is the first battle and the second battle? How many miles is that? And I said, I don't know, maybe 50. He goes, then how's that touching? And I said, well, it's all along the trail. The trail is what touches everything. And he went, oh, he goes, that's your definition of contiguous, huh? Touching. And I said, well, is that wrong? And he just kind of rolled his eyes. And I was like, yeah. And I think Cynthia was there that one. She was like, wow, he like handed you a cup of humble pie. He's like, I mean, he was obvious to me. Like contiguous meant WWWH, the canyon is attached to it. It is, you're going down a canyon, and then and it didn't hit me till then. I was like, well, there goes 18 months of research. Thanks, Forrest. I mean, it was just, I was so into Nez, but I did find it interesting when I said to him Nez Perce, he goes, what do you mean Nez Perce? And I said, he goes, be more specific. And that always has led me to believe Nez Perce is somehow affiliated with the final location. Anyway.
Well, I'm, back at least bumping elbows with Team Yellowstone again. So I'll keep it on the consideration list of stuff that I'm trying to eliminate.
Interesting. Okay. Well, we have gone an hour and a half tonight. Rudy, this is why I think so many wanted to see you back. You are analyzing things in a very interesting way, and your thought process is probably, I think, a little like Jack's. You said some things that I was like, I haven't seen it in that way before, which is super cool. That's what we need. We need these aha moments because we are in the terrible part of the chase where we're trying to find it without a treasure chest there. Dan Barbarosi's book's coming up. Mike, did you want to talk about the UK hunt? The legend has it. You already talked about 3D bronze, but just in case the 270 people have forgotten, do you want to? Oh, and didn't Beacon Star put up something today on their Facebook, which I haven't seen in forever. I don't know what you want to wrap because I just saw Randy.
Hashtag what would Putnam do? Okay. I just told Randy to put out another Clue video. That's all. We'll see.
I'll smack you in the mouth. I'm Neil Diamond.
That's right. All right, everybody. Tell Me Who is coming out in an hour and a half. So 3dbronze.com. 3dbronze.com, everybody. Absolutely free treasure hunt. But there's a twist. If you PayPal 3D Bronze $10, you get a PDF of his treasure hunt. You can still solve it without it. It's still going to be on the website, but it's something new he's doing. So check out 3dbronze.com/tellmewho at 10 p.m. tonight. I did get this little book right here. It's a new treasure hunt. Going to do a video on that, but we're trying to move. K-Pearl said I was going to do a double show tonight. That's not going to happen. So maybe over the weekend.
Wait, did you guys see all the comic books that he just bought and laid out and
Star Wars variant?
Okay, I'm just saying, how many boxes have you touched in this house? It's okay. I can do it. I have more flexibility, but do not use the show as an excuse why. Yeah, the comic books still have to. He just bought another collection. Oh, it's just a small collection.
Only a box. Yeah, it's Star Wars variants. But anyway, now you threw me off. Yeah, thank you for coming on, Rudy. We appreciate it. You definitely have an interesting point of view. How many treasure chests do you have over there? Just the two?
I've been treasure hunting my whole life. So the treasure chest that you see, over my shoulder here was one I made at summer camp when I was a single-digit age.
Oh, that's cool.
And it got lost for a while and has its own being refound story, also that took place back at that same time. And I've had it ever since. And it has real gold and silver inside of it.
Nice. All right.
Or come to my house and steal it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, don't do that, everybody. Speaking of treasure chests, the Venetti's replica chest number 28 is back on eBay. It did not get a bid for $5,500, and now it is back up with a starting bid of $5,500. So we'll see.
We're very optimistic.
Yeah, I mean, K-Pro might be interested in buying it for less than that. You never know. Another super chat from Minotaur Moreno. Thank you for the super chats, everybody. There's been a bunch tonight. The hunt was made for an English major. If you aren't thinking like an English major, you aren't thinking like Jack, in my opinion, Minotaur Moreno says. Okay, that's interesting.
I agree.
An English major. You got to know what those words meant. And that's what Forrest said. People don't know what the meaning of words are anymore.
Yeah, but you got to tie that in with the adventurer that he is. And there's just a marriage there between English major definitions of words with imagination maverick. I mean, that's where the lines cross. That's where the marriage is. And that's where I'm thoroughly confused because I didn't find it. Jack's not talking, but Jack, this community, we're going to get you, meaning we're going to get you to, we're going to figure it out. We're going to catch up to you, mister. And I don't know. The biggest part is, Rudy, if you came on tomorrow and said, this is what I think it is, and it's as clever as GPS, simple, it's all of those things. I just wonder, so many will say no, and we'll be doing this forevermore and evermore. So Jack, just come out and say it. You know you want to. You want us to be able to pick it apart and say, you were brilliant. It'll be all about you. And it's not right now. So for yourself, we want you to put it out to all of us. He's never gonna
Good
do
luck.
Good luck. Live audio from Jack.
And that's the way I grew up, and that's the way I'm gonna be.
That's the way he's going to be. I don't think he's going to let it out, but somebody else might. Somebody else.
I think we
might.
can figure it out. Surely there's at least one other person that's still involved in the chase that is as smart as Jack is. And yeah, I think it's doable. If anything, Jack coming out gave me more confidence that this is solvable, because we know it's a person and he's talking and giving tidbits, and I think he may have even slipped up a little. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think if Forrest, after all the years in preparation, slipped, Jack, I think, has slipped and maybe didn't even know it. And he might be counterintelligence slipping, all of that, but he has legal people after him and or legal issues and stuff. So he has to be real careful what he says, doesn't say, what can be confirmed and not. So he might be holding himself to a higher bar. So I tend to believe him unless I can rule out otherwise. And I like the concrete stuff that he's putting out. He's still putting it out. I wish he would do it more publicly, because he's allowing for the shenanigans and chaos. But kind of like Shannon, I know Shannon knows she's creating chaos. Jack is creating chaos. It's purposeful. I almost feel like they're toying with searchers, which we'll still get there. I don't think there's a lot of people going. There's a lot of people still in this hunt, and not, I'm giving up my job and life for it, but committing a few hours a week, looking at it, not going to give it up. They're not going anywhere. Yeah.
I'm optimistic, so we'll see.
Sorry, everybody. Me and Zozo were having a conversation there in the chat. Sorry about that. Yeah, a lot of people are saying English major.
Your mom goes to college.
That was for all the super chats we got. And that was for Rudy Green coming on. Thanks for coming on, Rudy. Interesting viewpoints for sure. You know, the thing is, we all have them, and at least we have a YouTube channel where people can give their viewpoint. So if you're interested in coming on and giving your viewpoint, just email kpro3@aol.com. Because she loves all those emails she gets.
You too can be a special guest.
That's right.
Yeah, and if you guys are wondering where Mike's going to be, we're getting ready to get off now. He will be with Indy for the next not 2, but 3 hours of fun. And yeah, there's lots of stuff happening. I will say the 2 presentations I already have ready are the photo analysis is out. Not a lot of huge findings, but I think still interesting. We can't just dismiss it. That was a big event, I think, in the whole chase, where we fundraising and all that. Did that one. And then I do have my conspiracy theory when time allows. A little nervous about it because there's a few things not out in the community, and it will be, and I'm not going to put 5 exclamation points. It's just a theory by a crazy searcher named KPro.
Bobby, 3dbronze.com/tellmewho will be out at 10 p.m. tonight. So I don't think the link will work until he releases it at 10. So we got an hour and 20 minutes. Shout out to Bobby. I posted something from the Entente Cordial. When I do that, my linguistic skills are going to come into play for that book. Posted it in the Facebook group, and he realized what it was right away. Can't believe I didn't see that. So thanks to Bobby. He's still doing his master class, as far as I know. You guys should check it out. Okay, tell me who in a little while. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you hit the bell. We'll probably go live over the weekend if we're not down at the new house that Chase Opley built. And thanks for the super chats, everybody. Thank you to Rudy Green from coming on. And
you like the jaws of life to get that image out of your head.
I don't know what that was for, but that was for all the super chats. So oh, nice, Rooster. He says he took his boys to the Marvel Avengers station. Remember when I said when we go to see Mystere at Treasure Island, they have the Marvel's Avengers station. Was it cool? Because I have not been there. May 4th is coming up, everybody. May the 4th be with you. Okay, that's it. I think that's enough Star Wars reference. Thanks, everybody. We will see you next time, whenever that may be. Stay safe, everybody.